I am such a cheapskate, and I want to share with you guys some of my tips, the things that I've done over the years, strategies, angles that I come at the dealer with, some things I do personally before I get into the purchase of a new car, because I don't like to get ripped off. I'm a cheap wad. I don't like to spend any more money than I really need to, and I'm sure most of you are probably the same. So basically, I made a few notes here, and I'm just going to walk through some of that right now. I want to kind of break this down. Let's just get right to the chase. Hopefully some of these tips help you. If you utilize one or two of these tips, guaranteed they'll save you a buck or two. If you use most of them, you're definitely going to save some money. And using some of these strategies definitely help me out. Every dealer is going to tell you, you know, the car that you're interested in is going to be the hot topic. It doesn't matter what you choose. When you walk into the dealer, it can be anything from the latest Ford Bronco down to the newest Toyota Corolla, and you walk in there and they'll justify to their degree why that's the car you need and why that's the most important car on the planet. So they'll sell that and they'll hold that, and that's a big reason why they seem to be able to justify the money. A lot of people don't ask questions, they just go with it. Or they're awestruck, or they're like, oh, you're kind of googly eyes over the latest and shiny paint jobs. Get the googly piece away from you. Well, that's not tip number one, but let's put that out there as an initial. Go in there with cold eyes. Don't go in there with emotions. Don't let emotions run wild with you, because that clearly will take hold, and then you'll pay too much. You'll just definitely pay too much. So what I have is a set of tips. The first tip, basically, other than being, you know, emotionless, which I've been told I'm good at doing that fairly well. But I do want to say, so here lately, what I've been finding, the dealers are going to try to rip you off. I'm going to be straight, cut to the point. I can't tell you how many manufacturers now I've walked into the dealership lately, if they happen to have a car on the floor, which is pretty uncommon these days, that they'll have a new one with a sticker, Monroney sticker, or some kind of tag in a window that's basically ready to go. Although I shouldn't say that. I mean, some of the big three, the Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler, Ford, I mean, all those, the big threes, they're loaded up the lots recently, so you'll probably find their lots pretty full. Some of them are playing clean ball, but some of them aren't. So I'll give you an example. I had an experience with potentially buying a Corvette. They had a couple in the showroom. They were brand new C8s. But they find a workaround. They find ways to say, hey, that they own it. They take the deed and then they sell it back to you, because the manufacturer suggests that it's actually worth X, but these guys buy it, take the Monroney sticker, say take the deed, and then you come in there and you want that new C8, because otherwise you got to wait, because a lot of these manufacturers now say you got to wait, you know, 2-3 months, 6 months, maybe a year or more. So they're usually using that tactic and that strategy to make you feel urgent, to make you feel like you're in a buzz and you got to buy something, and there's a new one and I don't have to wait. It's in the showroom right there. So what I found is those manufacturers, and really ones that I've seen that are notorious for this, are GM, Dodge, or not so much Dodge, but GM are bad ones for that. And some of these other manufacturers, I've even seen Toyota do some of this these days. So what they'll do is they'll actually have a car on the lot and they'll add a cushion. Ford's done that too with the Bronco, by the way. I mean, a lot of these dealers are doing this, where they'll take a popular model and they'll put it on their lot, or they'll put it in the showroom, and they'll add 10 grand, $15,000-$20,000. And I've talked to people lately, I'll tell you right now, I've been speaking to people personally that are shopping for a new GM pickup truck, and they looked up this dealer that's selling the, and they saw, oh look, new GM with these stats, these specs, and hey, I'm able to get this vehicle for $85,000. Okay. I said, whoa. I said, is it in the showroom? It's on the lot? Yes. Okay. I said, pump the brakes right there. Do build your own. Take the build sheet. Understand what you're looking at the dealer, and then go build your own on the Canada site. So this person did that, and lo and behold, when you do the build your own, that vehicle was actually about $11,000 less than that dealer was actually selling that vehicle for. So my first tip really is build your own online. If you're looking for a new car and you want to understand, am I getting the best bang for buck, don't buy that car on the floor. Right now is a time where these dealers are gouging, and quite honestly, if you want it, yeah, it's a matter of convenience. If you want it, you're going to pay it. but they're charging almost whatever they seem to want to, as long as it's within kind of an earshot of reasonable. They tack on 5 grand, 10 grand, 15. I've even heard $30,000 markups on some of these cars. Did you realize when I walked into that dealer, the C8 Corvette Z06 stickers at $130,000 on the Canadian site if you go base model, which isn't base. I mean, it's a C8 Z06. I walked into the same dealer here locally, and I asked them, they had one on the showroom floor, and they told me $300,000. So it's just getting greasy, right? So that's the first tip. Shop around, but most importantly, if there's a new vehicle and you see it on a lot, price it at the manufacturer's website, because that's probably going to give you the real meat and potatoes, and then you can go in there, either negotiate what they have on the floor or say the heck with it and go buy one, order it, and you just have to wait, folks. I mean, this is the way we're at in the markets. You just have to wait. Okay, so another point I have is, back in the day, throughout history, buying, the question of, do you buy cash? Do you buy through financing or leasing? What's your best financial decision? Generally, things have been up and down through the years, and if you were to ask me, 2 years ago, there was a good possibility financing was the way to go, because you could get into a vehicle at a very low finance rate. A lot of these vehicles were like 0.5, 0.9%, maybe 1.5% finance rate. And even after a 5-year term, you come out and you only pay a couple grand, low risk, low cost of lending and borrowing. And so it seemed like a good way to go. That way you could reinvest some of your money. If you even had that 50 grand for that new truck, instead of putting $50,000 cash on it, you could, if you were savvy, you could reinvest that 50 grand elsewhere, just put the minimum down and borrow money financially through, a lending institution, whether it's through the vendor, the manufacturer of that car, or the bank or whatever. Anyway, things have changed. Things have changed a lot. Finance rates now, we're talking 7.9%, 6.9%, 8.9%, 12.5%, okay? Folks, clearly the cost of borrowing is huge right now. And yes, these manufacturers want to get you taken on their finance, their lease rates. Of course they do. And they'll tell you whatever they want. Cash right now is king. Now, with that said, of course, if you take your in-house financing, this is typical. They'll often, there's a little bit of buffer in there. Sometimes you'll be able to chisel off a little more of the base price of that vehicle. But at the end of the day, if you're satisfied with the price of that vehicle before lending costs, and remember, go in there, be coy about whether you're spending cash or whether you're taking their financing or lease, be coy. Tell them you haven't really decided yet. Go in there, negotiate, squeeze as hard as you can, try to get the best price you can from that vehicle, and then drop down the cash. Because cash eliminates the idea of having a long-term drawn-out loan payment that's at a really high interest rate that you might wind up paying an extra 20 grand for a $50,000 vehicle after a 6 or 7 year term. So trust me, right now is the time you probably want to have cash in hand. This is probably just likely going to serve you better than lending and borrowing, essentially. So another thing I would suggest is, maybe get pre-approved. If you go in there guns a-blazing, you haven't done any of your research, and you go in there and you don't have pre-approval, then you go into the manufacturer, and if you are having to borrow, maybe you don't have that cash, that's fine. Not everybody has the cash, that's cool. Or maybe you decide you want to spend it elsewhere, that's okay. The idea of getting pre-approved at banks and other lending institutions outside of that car brand is going to get you the best bang for buck. Because remember, if you see that shiny toy and you sit down and you negotiate, and then you're like, oh, yeah, I need to use in-house financing. Well, what's going to happen is they're going to offer it up. You're going to get what they offer you. But unless you really know what your bank might give you, or even shop possibly, if you're borrowing a significant amount of money against this car, you may want to shop at 2 or 3 different financial institutions before you go into the dealer. Then when you're at the dealer, you see what they have to offer, then that's probably going to get you the best offerings, right? If you have a bank that offers 4.9%, another one at 5.9%, and the dealer tells you 7.9%, who are you going to borrow from? Well, it's pretty clear to me. Now there's a caveat to that. And you got to remember, if you're borrowing money, and maybe you even have the money to pay it off, but you just want to borrow for a little while and you want to free up some cash, but maybe you want to pay off that loan early, you have to ask the question and make sure it's in writing, or you show them where that writing piece is, that whether you can pay it off early without penalties. Because there are a lot of vendors now will allow you to do that, but not everyone. And so a lot of them will lock you in and make sure that you pay for the full term and you pay the full amount of lend or borrowing amount. So make sure that you can skid on out of there and mic drop your way out of there and pay off half that loan. So if you're able to come across some extra money, maybe a year or 2 years in, and you're like, I want to get this gone because I don't want to make these extra interest payments, you want to be in a position where the dealer is going to let you get out of this, or the bank is going to let you pay it off early without penalties. So that's another important tip that I have to pass along. Another one, avoiding some of the extra knickknacks. And I say this knick-knack, tallywhack. There's some options I feel are good value, like paint protection film, right? Expel, 3M, SunTech. Products like that are amazing. And if you have expensive windshields that have like sensors in them, and they have things like rain detection sensors, they also have maybe heads-up display. Some of those windshields can cost $3,000 or $4,000. So then you might even want to put products on there like Clearplex, for example, or some other glass protection. Those are all expensive products. But I'll tell you right now, do those outside at a third party, because what's going to happen is these dealers are just going to offer it up to you. They'll give you the lower grade, the thinner, the entry-level product of those lineups, put in their markup. Trust me when I say it, I've seen this. I experienced this firsthand. We bought a Toyota Camry last year, and what we did was we asked them in-house just, hey, how much for the front hood, half hood, 24-inch hood, fenders, bumper, mirrors, A-pillars, the typical, right? And they quoted us a number of like $2,200. I said, that's ludicrous. So we said, you know what, we'll take delivery of the car. We'll make an appointment at a local vendor here in town. And we did, and we drove the car over there, barring no chips. We took a chance, but whatever. We drove it over there. They slapped that all together for $800. And they used the premium product of Expel. So, shop around. Don't get the extras. Glass etching, gap insurance, roof racks, undercoating, extra mats. There's better third-party mats. For example, you want to get those waterproof mats. I could give you some vendor names. I'm not going to go there. No one's sponsoring this video. But I will tell you that there's better aftermarket floor mats. There's a lot of these extras they're going to try to pitch you on. Really think twice whether you need it, and assess the value of it, essentially. Like I said, there's some things that I've already said that I've experienced that I just go third party outside the door. Remember, most of this stuff, they don't do a lot of this work. They sub it out. So they're always going to put on their piece of the pie. So anyway, avoid some of the extras and you'll save yourself some money. I'm not saying don't do those extras, but go maybe third party or install some of that yourself, or, there's a lot of options, right? Another thing I'll say, okay, research ahead. So I've said this before, research ahead, and that comes down to lending costs. Go check with your banks. So checking what that cost of ownership of that vehicle is, because you might be in a position, I might buy a Toyota Camry, or I might buy a Toyota Corolla, right? Or I might buy a Honda Civic, or I might buy a Honda Civic or a Honda Accord. What's the cost of ownership? If you really care about your money, and maybe money's no issue, that's cool, you buy the car you want to buy. But the one thing that I've found is understanding a little bit of what you're getting into. So if you're buying an expensive car, even better example, a Hellcat or a Jeep. These are cars that are a bit more niche vehicles. You might be surprised when you call the insurance company and they quote you a number that's, whoa, all of a sudden they tell you, yeah, that's $2,500 for you for insurance for a year. And you're like, why so much? Well, a lot of it might be because it's niche. Maybe it's a commonly stolen vehicle. Maybe statistically there's lots of those crashed. Maybe parts are expensive on that car. There's a lot of reasons why some insurance rates are higher. So understand the vehicle that you're looking at. Understand how much that insurance is going to cost in advance. Maybe understand what the fuel costs are. What's the fuel consumption? We have to think about fuel these days because fuel is so damn expensive. Think about how much that is. So research the mileage, research your insurance costs, And of course, check out great channels like Exotic Car Play Place on YouTube. They'll tell you about all of the bad cars to avoid, cars that won't last very long and cars that will last forever, because that will also give you a good indication as to vehicles that will cost you dearly in the long run. Because, you know, going to editorials, if I can say, are great. I mean, they trend a lot of data, but they also make a lot of predictions, and a lot of the stuff that they guess on is based on stats and historicals, but they don't also incorporate a lot of like changes. Say, for example, BMW came out a real bad place with some of their engines, and now they're a lot better. So they historically might have bad ratings, but they've made some big changes. A lot of changes happen, right? So you're going to have to make sure you understand reliability, problem areas, fuel costs, as well as insurance. So understand the cost of ownership for some of these vehicles, and that's going to take you a long way to saving money in the long run. Another thing to think about if you're looking at a new car, if the costs are just too high, or you just like, this is just, my morals, my ethics won't allow me to spend that kind of money on this vehicle. I mean, a Raptor for $150,000? Come on. Like, I don't know. I mean, just out of principle, I'm not buying that. I mean, I'm not really interested in that anyway, but honestly, just out of principle, I will not spend that money for that type of vehicle. It's old technology. So maybe you have to think about buying an older vehicle. Maybe, you know, you think about there's more bang for buck in buying that 7 or 8 year old vehicle. Now, a word of caution with what's been going on the last 2 years, I think we know that a 2 or 3 year old vehicle, in a lot of cases, just go look at Toyotas. And I talked about videos about this, but Toyotas are kind of an exception right now, where a 2-year-old Toyota with 50,000 kilometers can sell as much or more than a brand new one, because people don't want to wait for that. So for example, a RAV4 hybrid, a 1.5-year-old vehicle that might only have 35,000 kilometers on it, almost guaranteed will be worth more on the lot than to buy a new one, because to buy a new one you're gonna have to wait 1.5 to 2 years. So Toyota knows that, and so they're gonna charge accordingly. So you know, that 2-3-year-old vehicle isn't always the best choice nowadays. You definitely want to do your homework on that. Depending on the brand, it varies depending on the manufacturer, but you may have to look at an older vehicle as well if you find the new vehicles are just priced out to lunch. So that's something I've looked at as well. Another tip, I'd say go with a manual transmission. And you know, basically according to cars.com, in 2022, they say you can save an average of about $1,416 anywhere, you know, $800 to $5,500 when you choose a manual over, you know, basically an automatic transmission. So what I'd say is, I mean, we know that there are some savings. I can probably count literally on maybe one hand how many people I know that drive manual transmission cars these days. There's not too many. And because of that, a lot of people can't drive manual transmissions. And they also even say jokingly that if you want to prevent your car from being stolen, own a manual transmission, because most of these thieves out there can't even drive a manual these days. So a manual can save you some money because they're harder to sell. A lot of people love manuals. I personally love manual transmissions, and if every car came in a manual, I'd be great with that. But not everybody is, and prices are, you know, commensurate of that. That their popularity has gone away. People love autos. They love the great automatics. They shift fast nowadays. They shift faster than manuals. The DCTs are great. Some people are even okay with CVTs, the continuously variable transmissions. They're simple. You put it in gear and away you go. Zoom, zoom. You can, you know, some drivers like to do up their makeup and eat their sandwich and drink their coffee and read their magazine on their way to work. None of which you should be doing, by the way. But there's people that prioritize that, and therefore a manual wouldn't fit the card. So you can get a good deal if you buy a manual transmission. Timing of when you buy it. I talked about this too. The right time of day, right time of year, right time of month. Remember, year end is great time because they're trying to blow out the old model. So at the end of 2023, as we roll into 24 start hitting the lots, that's probably a good time to go in there. There's going to be more incentives. The dealer's going to throw extras at you, maybe for free. You can negotiate, say, throw in the mats, throw in the paint protection film. Instead of you paying for it, get these yo-yos to actually throw that stuff in there. So what I'd say is time it. Year end is good. If you don't mind having that outgoing model, as well as certain times of the month. Closer to the end of the month is better. Again, same thing. They're going to be pushing for quotas. Holiday season, not so much. Don't go in busy times. Maybe drive by manufacturer like dealer car lots when things are quieter, maybe time of day, early mornings. When they're quieter and they're not so hustle bustle, you might have a better opportunity to negotiate with the dealer. So pick your times, and you'll likely get a better price. Other things are, there's membership warehouse stores. I mean, we all know about that. I don't want to use the big C word, but they've had deals with, some of the manufacturers. Sometimes there's opportunities there. You can sometimes explore some of that. There's pre-negotiated prices that get you better deals at times. So you can look at that. That's an option. Another option is be prepared to walk away. Never get stuck where you're feeling desperate. Never get stuck where you're like, you're on the losing end of a deal and you just, no, I still don't feel good about it. I'm not getting the amount off. The dealer's playing hardball. His arguments are rebutting everything and I'm just not getting the deal I want. Just be ready to walk away. Sometimes other dealers of the same brand will give you a better deal. Sometimes you have to go to a whole new brand. Don't get your heart set on that, because if you are fixated, they will take you for a ride. So be ready to walk away. I've had experience. I'll give you an example. Jeep TJ years ago. I bought this TJ, super low miles, it was slightly used. I walked into a Dodge Jeep dealer. I love this Jeep. I wanted it. I saw it online. I went down there, test drove it. I loved it. It was great. Met all the criteria. And then we came into the showroom and they were trying to grease me. And I said, no, here's my number. No, this is it. This is the lowest we can go. I'm like, this went back and forth. They saw the glimmer in my eye, but I also knew enough that I wasn't going to get snookered. So I said, you know what? No, I'm going home. See you guys later. I'll think about it. I grabbed my wife. We left. We walked out the door. I swear, I just opened up the door to my car and the salesman comes flying out, slams the door open of the dealership. Whoa. Okay, come on in. Let's talk about that. We negotiated and I walked out with the price I wanted. Now, that's not going to happen every time. I promise you that won't. But it worked for me and it will work at times. So you've got to use these strategies. One other thing we know right here, cell phones, okay? This is another tip I have, is using your cell phone is your friend. So while you're in negotiations with the dealer and the manufacturer, grab your cell phone and you can literally look up local cars for sale. Go to, I use Kijiji. CarMax is another one. Go to autotrader.com.ca. Look at all those different options. Look at what the average vehicles are selling for. Look at what they're new. Be ready to pull up the vendor, the MSRP from a dealer. Do a quick build of your own, but have your phone here. Because when that salesman's over talking to the manager, you can run some numbers right here and say, look, this is the deal and I'm not paying a penny more. As a matter of fact, I also want this, that, and the other. So this also combines with to be able to walk away if they still want to argue with you and they don't want to give you the deal. That's fine. Take your phone, take your boots, take your spouse, and get the heck out of Dodge, so to speak, pardon the pun. So right there, check that out. You're going to love that video because that's all about the fact that why this isn't necessarily the best time to buy a car. So hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.